Hey everybody, it's Jay Jacobson here. Welcome to the first episode of the Cinephiles podcast. What is the Cinephiles podcast? Well, I'm hosting it and I'm going to be interviewing all kinds of people. I hope you stick around. We're going to have people, near and far, people as near as my wife and people as far as Canada, hopefully. And so we're going to have a lot of things to talk about, a lot of movies to talk about, and I hope you can sit back, relax, and enjoy. We have a great first episode for you. It's part one of our Wicked review, where me and my wife, Tricia, talk about what we think the movie's going to be like. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to say this at the very end, but I'm also going to say it now because we are a new podcast. Make sure to follow us on all of our socials. We'll have them linked. And if you just want to listen to us and not want to watch us, you can listen to us on any podcast streaming service you can think of, Spotify, iTunes. But if you want to watch us, we'll also be on YouTube where you can kind of get a better visual of what we're talking about. So without further ado, let's just jump into our first episode of our part one, impressions and review of Wicked. Hope you enjoy.
The Cinephiles Podcast.
So my first guest is my wife. It's the easiest way to start a podcast because then you don't have to deal with people's schedules, right?
Yeah.
So that's a plus.
Although I feel like my schedule is kind of hard to deal with.
Yeah, it's actually probably harder to get you to do something in a schedule than somebody who doesn't live with me.
It might be. It might be.
I don't know. So tell us about yourself, Tricia.
I am a singer, a live streamer, a YouTuber, all of the above. That's what I do.
Awesome. So you are pretty active on TikTok. I help you out with that quite a bit.
Yes.
Not saying I'm like the sole reason you're good at it or anything, but
You're like, but I'm a big reason.
I've been really supportive. How many followers do you have on TikTok?
As of tonight, we just crossed over 109,000. So, hopefully 110,000 by the time this podcast airs.
And how many years have you been doing it?
2.5.
2.5 years.
It feels like longer.
It does. It feels like you've been doing it for like 5 years.
Yeah, no, almost 3.
So, plug your TikTok.
Sure. I'm a jazz Americana singer, and my TikTok handle is at Patricia Holly, TriciaHolly. Follow me.
Speaking of music, you did more than just TikTok when I met you. Well, you didn't do TikTok yet, but the main way I met you was through theater, which is what I did. And we were in a musical together, which was Young Frankenstein the Musical at the Des Moines Playhouse. And
That's right.
How many years ago was that?
I don't want to put a number on it. Gosh, forever ago.
I think you said 8 years.
Okay, you can put a number on it. That's fine.
You said 8 years. So, yeah, we met in Young Frankenstein, and we both obviously have a love for musicals. And so, the biggest movie of the year is obviously Wicked. Technically Wicked Part 1. And I wanted to bring Tricia on because Tricia knows a lot about Wicked, and it's actually one of the musicals I don't know a lot about. I've never seen it. Tricia saw it. Did you see it on Broadway? No, you saw it touring, right?
I saw it touring. It came to Omaha.
Okay. And I've never seen it. I've actually never been a huge fan of it. Not because I thought it was bad or anything, literally just because I just had no interest in it, to be honest. Like, it just wasn't something that rang my bell. But with the movie out and everything, I finally walked up to Tricia the other day and I said, okay, so tell me, like, I have problems with it, but I've never seen it. So I kind of walked through some of the problems I had from what I heard of the show, and some of the answers she gave made me feel a little bit better about it. So we thought, why don't we discuss it? Because we both haven't seen it yet. We're a little late to the party on it, but we thought we might as well talk about it and kind of your opinion on it from the musical side of it, and my opinion on it from just the very little knowledge I have. And then we're going to do a part 2 of the first episode, and we're going to go see the movie this week, and we're going to come back and kind of discuss our feelings about it. So
I think it's going to be really interesting to see from 2 different perspectives, from someone who was in love with the musical and someone who's never seen the musical and is only being exposed to it by the the movie. But remind me, you've listened to the music though.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to the track or the Broadway cast recording because it's everywhere.
Well, yeah.
But I've only listened to it like off and on. Like I've just heard it in the background of things, and I'm sure I tried listening to it when I was younger. And obviously, Defying Gravity is kind of the big song of the show that everybody thinks of and popular in those. I know those relatively well, but I don't really know the other songs
Or the story.
or I didn't know the story at all. I mean, I was telling Trisha, I thought the story of Wicked was just a prequel. I didn't realize it was actually a prequel then that crosses into The Wizard of Oz.
Yes. Now, to be fair, I think the movie ends right after Defying Gravity.
Because that's Act 2, right? Is
where it's crossing over, right, where you like see Dorothy's shadow and all that stuff. So what we will be seeing is just a prequel.
Sure. And I don't think that can really be spoilers. Like, if you think that's spoilers, like, up yours, because like it's been around forever. And so if someone's like, spoilers, man, it's like, sure, I guess, but
also I feel like when new movies come out, if you are listening to a podcast about a new movie and you haven't seen it yet, you have to be prepared to have something spoiled. Granted, we have not seen it yet.
Yeah.
This is just first impressions from watching the trailer and knowing the show for me.
Well, and I let Trisha kind of spoil some of it for me, and because I knew some of the spoilers, but then I just wanted from knowing the general plot, I just wanted some of my questions answered because I wasn't sure if I was going to feel better about it or not. And after you explained it a little bit more, I did feel a little bit better about it and about kind of where it goes and what it's doing and stuff like that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. It actually got me a little more excited for it. I wasn't that excited at all to see it until we talked about it.
I'm excited.
You're excited, yeah.
I'm very excited.
I mean, so yeah, it is the biggest movie of the year. When you listen to this or you watch this, you've probably already seen it. But one reason was we were really busy, but the other reason we haven't seen it is because we thought, let's make this first episode kind of our first thoughts before we go in and see it. So, starting off, have you wanted a Wicked movie adaptation in your life, or were you okay with just the musical?
Oh, no, of course. Of course. I feel like since it came out in 2003, everyone has wanted a movie adaptation of Wicked. I would have preferred it come out like 10 years ago.
Sure. I was thinking that too, because I was like, when they said they were doing the movie, I mean, it's kind of one of those, I don't think it's been in like development hell or anything, but there have been rumors of other casts for it. I heard Lady Gaga was up for Elphaba at one point with a different director.
Lea Michele.
Like they've had other people audition, and some have either been technically cast in the role or some have just auditioned and they never were told they were cast in the role. But I know that this is one of those that they've been trying to get off the ground, no pun intended, for a while. But yeah, so you are excited to see it? I mean, you were excited when you heard there was a movie, or were you not excited?
Yeah, I was cautiously optimistic. I'll say that.
I think that's what everybody is when they adapt things too, is anytime they say they're going to adapt something from something that's really beloved, you always have a little bit of hesitancy at the beginning because you're like, is it going to be, there's a lot of things they can do. Sometimes when they adapt something, it can turn into something completely different. And they add new songs, or they remove songs, or they cut scenes, kind of like the Harry Potter movies. A lot of people get really... I remember when that was all happening, everyone was really... Every movie was like, oh, what are they going to cut in this one? Or they didn't do this, or they added this, or... so like, I remember, for example, like in Half-Blood Prince, they added blowing up the burrow, the Weasley's home, in the movie. Oh,
people were really upset about that.
Yeah, I remember that. And they like did like, I saw it like on the news. It was like on the news, people were like, fans are outraged about an added scene. And I just remember reading like the fourth book and going into the fourth movie and going, wow, it's been 5 minutes in the movie and it's been like 20 chapters of the book. But I feel like, you can either be something like Harry Potter, where relatively they do a great job with, getting the best points out and getting the story told, and it still makes sense. And the things that they remove were intentional for various reasons, and they usually work out. Or you can have something, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, comic book movies are always that way, where they adapt a storyline, and it's really just the storyline in name only.
Well, and I mean, Wicked is also based off of a book, so they cut a lot out of the book in order to make the musical.
Yeah.
I think that the Wicked book, if I remember correctly, it's been years since I've read it. P.S. Real dry read. So if you're thinking about, you just saw this movie, you loved the musical, and you have never read the book, and you're excited to pick it up because it's going to be full of that Aussian whimsy, it is dry. And if I remember correctly, kind of dark. It opens with her mom and it's from the point of view of Elphaba's mother,
Yeah.
not Elphaba. So we meet Elphaba in the musical when she is going to college. And in the book, it's her mom when she's 3 years old and she's contemplating whether or not to let her drown in the river. And she's like, if it's an accident, bummer.
Sure.
I mean, it's dark. But all that to say, they cut a lot out of the book too. So I think that the musical adaptation, or I'm sorry, the film adaptation of the musical is just going to be one for one the musical, because I personally think that if they take anything out of it or they add anything to it, that outrage is going to spark again.
Sure. Well, I saw someone post something where they said, like, so Wicked, the movie, is based off of Wicked, the musical, which is based off of Wicked, the book, which is based off of The Wizard of Oz, the movie, which is based off of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the book.
Yeah.
And so it kind of just like, everything at some point has become an adaptation, and maybe through multiple different eyes. But
Right.
So the other question I had for you is the casting. Did you have anybody in mind when they said they were doing a Wicked movie? Who would you have cast in the first, let's say just in Elphaba and Glinda?
So that's hard. I don't know that I necessarily had anybody in mind where I would just me, obviously. I don't have anyone in mind that I would love to have seen in those roles. What I will say is I knew I didn't want Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, who originated the roles on Broadway.
Right.
A lot of people were bummed about that, where they're like, oh, I wish that they just would have had the leads be the leads from the original cast. And I love that idea, but they're too old. They're way too old.
Yeah. Now
especially, but even when it came out, it's definitely a Broadway thing to cast a little older. For example, in Wicked, they're college students, right? So you're thinking like 18 to 24-ish. And on Broadway, they typically will be like, okay, you're 20, but you're actually 30. Or you're 28, and kind of pushing it, where Hollywood does the opposite, where they're like, oh, okay, you're playing a 20-year-old, you need to look 20.
Yeah.
And so I know they didn't. There used to be this joke about Hollywood. They would cast like high schoolers and they'd be like losing their hair because they were like mid-30s.
I mean, it's a lot of movies, but I always think of the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie. Mm-hmm. If you go and look at any, like, he's supposed to be a senior in high school. And if you go to any of those scenes and you look at, like, not just Tobey Maguire, but the people in the background of his high school, they're older than me now. Like,
you're like, that's a dude in finance.
Like, that guy is so old. But yeah. And has that changed? I don't really know.
Yes, that unfortunately changed as we were growing up. So, it was always like, we want you to be 18 to play younger was casting. 18 to play younger for a high schooler. And so they would cast, even in Glee,
right.
They cast these kids, these quote quote high schoolers that were in their 30s. And that was a hard pill to swallow, because then when we got to, our 20s, then it was, oh no, we want high schoolers to look like high schoolers, so now we want you to be 16 to 18. And it's like, well, crap.
Yeah. Well, in theater, I know it's kind of varies on wherever you're at and kind of what they prefer for age. Mm-hmm. But I do know that with women, they like a certain, there's a small gap. It's a very small gap.
Yep.
For very specific lead roles. And so, for guys, they can get away with like, you can be 30 and still play an 18-year-old, or you can even be aged up. But for women, I've noticed it's a little bit more difficult for them to kind of fit into a role depending on age.
Yeah, that's true. Is it fair? No. Is it true? Yes.
Yeah. So with Wicked, so we've talked about, kind of your expectations, maybe when it comes to when you first thought about if it were a movie. We thought about the hypothetical casting. You never really did answer my question about, did you have anybody in mind?
I didn't. I just knew that every time they had a fan casting, I was like, no.
That's almost always the case. I mean, I always reference back to superhero movies because that's kind of like my jam. But, you always have these same exact actors that are always up for almost every... I mean, I don't know. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch was a choice for Doctor Strange that I think was based... The studio just saw how many people wanted him to play that role, and he did a great job. But I'm pretty sure I saw Benedict Cumberbatch up for Bruce Banner and
sure.
like Namor, and like
he was great for Doctor Strange.
And that was a good choice, but it was just funny because like you just see it's like, it feels like fan cast. It's always like a group of 5 people and they never stray from those 5 people no matter what the role is. It's like, oh well, they could fit in this.
Right now I feel like Zendaya is... Every fan cast for everything is like Zendaya and Tom Holland, and it's like, well, that's great.
I'm always thinking of
because they're great, but
they're
just everywhere.
What's her first name? I think it's Elizabeth Daddario. Is that her, or is it it's not Elizabeth. Alexandra Daddario.
You're going to have to help me out here.
If you saw her, you would know who I'm talking about. She has a brunette she has a really piercing eyes, and she was a model too. But if you saw her, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh,
but
you seem to have a really good description of her.
No, but the only reason I have a good description of her is because I'm pretty sure she has been in a fan cast for every female superhero I've ever heard of.
Oh, funny.
I mean, it's like Spider-Woman, Wonder Woman, Mary Jane Watson, who like She-Venom or whatever you want to like. It's every single time there is a casting for some female Supergirl. Like,
sure,
it's always her, and it's just funny because like then you get on TikTok and you see like people scroll through like a fan cast, and she's always on there. So I've seen her like a million times, but maybe at some point she'll actually get a role because I don't think she's actually been in a superhero movie yet.
They just really want her. Yeah,
and that's kind of how I feel about like Benedict Cumberbatch.
I mean, and that's fair. I hope that Hollywood listens a little bit to fan castings because obviously you have people that would support that.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into
like I said,
consideration.
Like Benedict Cumberbatch was one that they got a lot of push from fans, and then they kind of just went with it. And then that's why you had like John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, because he was one everybody wanted to be Reed Richards for so long that they just threw him in Multiverse of Madness.
I will say I am shocked that someone that I never would have expected to get Glinda was Ariana Grande. I think that's an interesting choice. I'm very curious to see, because she's a phenomenal singer. I think she's great. It's just when I think of Glinda and then I think of Ariana Grande, I don't see it. So I'm curious to see how she represents her and how she portrays her in the movie.
Well, and the big debate a lot of people have had, and from what I've heard, she's done great, and she's actually like kind of blended into the part well. But the big concern everybody had was that she was going to be Ariana Grande playing Glinda, so they were going to like popify all of the
Right.
songs.
That would be my. And you're saying that that's not what
From
happened?
what I've heard, I don't know yet, but everyone was very concerned like Popular was going to become like a modern pop hit as
Okay.
opposed to a Broadway song from a musical. But um, for me with her, I always thought when they cast her, her look wasn't quite what I imagined in my head for Glinda.
You are not alone on that. A lot of people did not like her Glinda look.
Well, she was just it was the main thing for me was just she's so petite, and she, speaking of age, she looks so young. And I know there's supposed to be younger portrayals of the characters, but I just thought her in particular, she was really young. But,
That's so funny. I feel the opposite.
you think she's too old?
I think both of them, both of the cast, her and Cynthia Erivo, I think that they look too old. In fact, I think, especially because they split it into part one and part two, what they should have done was gone with casts that were unknown, first of all, because you don't need names to sell Wicked. Wicked's gonna sell. I think that they should have gone with like 23-year-olds. 23-year-olds, and then while we were waiting for part two, they would grow into their own, and then be those adults several years later. And I think that, because that's the thing, is that they're supposed to be college age, and you could technically argue you're thinking of college in our world, where maybe in Oz they go to college when they are 28,
Yeah.
or I think 31 or 32, however old they are. But yeah, I thought that they were just a little too old.
I think that they are doing it kind of like how they did like the Lord of the Rings movies. I think part two is already filmed. So I think they just did them back to back. So I don't know. I don't know if. Tell me, is there a flash forward? Is there some time in between Act One and Act Two? Is it like a long period of time, or is it?
I don't think it's particularly long, but it's long enough for them to be out of school.
I see. Because they got to catch up to kind of the ages of where they're at by Wizard of Oz.
Right. Yep.
One casting choice that I think was really good, and I think it's just because he kind of just emulates this anyway, is I really like Jeff Goldblum as the wizard, because his exuberance and his performances, I think he can kind of just be a natural. And even if he's a little bit of just playing Jeff Goldblum as the wizard, I think it works really well. The one thing I will say is I saw I don't remember if it was in a trailer or if it was just something someone posted, just a little clip of him reacting to Alphaba. I think it's during Defying Gravity. And his eyes just, he perfectly portrayed like that fear and concern of what have I gotten myself into. So I'm really excited to see how he does. But
I also like it because Jeff Goldblum is really good at playing anti-heroes instead of just full-on villains. And I think that's a thing. Like, the wizard is not a good guy. He, in any adaptation of
Right.
this. So like in The Wizard of Oz, he's always a con man, always. And this has no exception. There's no exception in Wicked. But I do like that they didn't get someone that they're like, he's just going to be evil because he's the evil wizard.
yeah.
Because it would have cheapened the complicated character.
And going into the complicated character stuff, that was something that you were kind of telling me about when we were discussing it earlier, I was trying to get a better grasp of it. When you look at the story of Wicked and people walk out of, say, the musical, what do you think the message of that story is? And what do you think the movie has to convey from the musical to really get it right?
To me, the message has always been stand up for what you believe in, no matter what the consequences are. And there are very real consequences for standing up for what you believe in, for Elphaba and for Glinda even. To me, it's stand up for what you believe in, and second, that your convictions have consequences. So I don't want to give it away because I know you haven't seen it, and so I'm trying to not, but it's really powerful. And I think the other thing is that a lot of people are going to try and politicize this, where we start thinking of it as like a full-on group of people, or like a euphemism for one thing or another. And to me, it doesn't have anything like that. Like Elphaba, the thing that makes Elphaba so special and so powerful is that she is alone. She is absolutely unequivocally alone. No one can empathize with her situation because no one else on earth has her issues. And her issues, quote, quote, are literally being ugly and green.
Sure.
Those are her issues. And then she's a very powerful witch, which is seen as a good thing until the political parties involved in Oz can't use it to their advantage, and then all of a sudden they turn the Ozians against her. And so it's very complicated and powerful, and I think that there are a lot of lessons that you can learn from it, but those would be the two main ones that I would say are the message that I left with anyways when I saw the show.
Well, I would say that that's, a detriment to not a detriment. I would say that that's something that the show is doing right then, and even the movie to that degree, is if you have people walking out of the theater and they're saying, I relate to this because of my very specific situation. That's the point of the movie, is it's a broad understanding that everybody feels that way at some point in their life. So, if somebody who is disabled comes out of it and they said, I felt heard because, it reminded me of some of the trials and tribulations I've been through in my life. That's not necessarily meaning that that's the message that Wicked is trying to portray. They're trying to portray it as, that sounds like you. Great. That's the point, is we are more alike than we are different. And even in our own struggles. And so I would say that, walking out of the theater, whether it's the theater for the musical or the theater for the movie, if you walk out of it and you relate to the characters, especially someone like Elphaba, but even Glenda to that degree, they must have done their job right, because, I think the most powerful form of storytelling is when you can relate to everyone, and everyone can understand this character, and everyone can kind of say, take something from them and say, that's me. And that unifies in the end.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why Wicked is so well received as a musical, is because we've all had that moment in our life at least once, probably several times, where you're kind of faced with should I go with what's popular or should I go with what I know is right? And that's kind of where it's like, oh gosh, do I go with the crowd, or do I stand up knowing that the crowd is not going to like me? This is not a good decision in their eyes, but I know that it's the right decision in my heart. We've all had that. And so that's why I think that, that Wicked is so well received. And I hope that the movie kept it like that, where they just tell the story and you get to come out with your own interpretations of what you think the message is.
Sure. Well, because I think that, if you get rid of that, what I was just talking about, that unifying story thread of, everyone can relate to these characters in some form or fashion, and you narrow it down enough, it then becomes less grand in a storytelling perspective. I think that this movie, for all I've seen of it within the trailers and stuff, it feels really epic. And I think that, you can show a lot of epic things in a musical with a lot of the effects and stuff like that. But to be able to translate something like that into a movie and then convey it to a larger group of audience besides people that see just theater or musical theater, and take the really fantasized aspect of it and then like bolster the story that just can reach everybody, I think that's the best way to do it. I mean, I think that's where you'll have, and I think they may have done it, because from what I've seen, there's just so many people who just unanimously agree that this is something big and it's a big deal and
Right.
it's everybody loves it and they all love it for different reasons, which is also a good sign. Usually if you love it for different reasons, it means it's reaching a broad audience. And yeah, so that's at least how I feel from my perspective, just seeing the small amounts of things and clips and stuff.
I would agree with that. It reminds me of Oppenheimer. I know we're talking about movies of the year, right? Because this is clearly the movie of the year.
Yeah.
You can't go on TikTok without every other video, or if even that infrequent.
Right.
It's pretty much there's like 3 videos of Wicked and then 1 video that's maybe an ad, and then you go back to Wicked.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a topic of discussion this year, but it makes me think of when Oppenheimer came out. And Oppenheimer is another one that it's very politically charged. There are some complications with a bunch of very complicated characters that it's hard to be like, oh, you're the good guy or you're definitely the bad guy, because everything is so complicated. That's how the characters are in Wicked, and I just hope that when we go into the theater, I still feel that. Like Elphaba still has her flaws. Glinda has her flaws, but deep down, you get to see the good side of Glinda. Those are really important aspects to all, and it's not just the 2 leading ladies, but to all of the characters. So I hope they keep that complexity.
Yeah, everyone has good intentions in their own eyes. And they
Why
all are
would have
doing
good intentions.
Well, there
Sorry.
you go. Yeah, we were at Target the other day, and we were walking around, and they were not only right around Christmas time, where you're usually hearing nothing but Christmas music, but they were playing the entire soundtrack of Wicked. And then we were walking around, and they had just end caps upon end caps of just licensed Wicked stuff. And I don't know how long it's been since I've seen a movie that's had that much, like the Wicked makeup palettes and the Wicked headphones, and you could pick pink or green.
There are a lot of collabs right now.
Or like, I'm sure that, I don't know, there's all kinds of stuff. And so it does feel big. And sometimes when you look at that in movies, you go, oh, they're really desperate to get people into the theater. And so they're pushing this marketing like crazy. I felt like that with Beetlejuice a little bit. Now, granted, that's another one I haven't gotten around to see yet, is Beetlejuice, the sequel to Beetlejuice.
Well, what I'll say about it is there was a ton of marketing for it. It came out and no one said anything.
And I'm sure, from what I've heard, most people have said it's a great movie, but I sometimes you got to kind of look at it and get a little nervous, because you go, oh, okay, so either this has just the right amount of marketing for such a big movie, like Batman from 1989, like it was just meteoric, everything was Batman, it was Batmania. And then you have some things that I felt like something like a Beetlejuice, it's like, man, it really feels like people put a lot of money into the marketing of this movie, and there's not a lot of like magic and buzz surrounding it. I mean, there's excitement for the people who want to go see it, and there's just excitement like it's a regular movie that people are excited to see. And then you have something like Wicked, which I'm not even a fan of Wicked, and the buzz is so strong that it's buzzing on to me, and I'm even getting hyped by just how much of it is, how excited everyone is, and how everybody's just, it's very, yet again, unifying and feels like a holiday.
Does that ever turn you off from it, though? When something gets so meteoric that you're like, I can't go to the bathroom without hearing Wicked?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm already sick of it to death.
Oh, okay.
But it's, yet again, though, it's one of those things that's also a bit justified. One movie, I keep talking about, like, we're on the Cinephiles podcast. It's the first episode. I'm trying to convince the audience that I know everything about movies, but I'm going to reference another movie that I haven't seen, which is Barbie. And Barbie was one of those too that it was the Barbenheimer thing. So you had Oppenheimer and you had Barbie, and
you chose Oppenheimer.
Yes, I did. But Barbie was another one though that just like, it just took off and it just went crazy. And now I can't even look at a Barbie in the aisle because I just was so inundated with Barbie, and I hadn't even seen the movie yet. And maybe that's why I haven't seen it. Like that's probably what's going to happen to me with Beetlejuice is I'll eventually watch it once I've stopped seeing, CarMax commercials with Beetlejuice. And I can just go, that movie, I never got to see it. I'm gonna go watch it. That'll probably happen to me with Barbie, and when it dies down just a little bit. It happens to me with kids movies all the time. So like something like Despicable Me, like I love Despicable Me. Despicable Me 7, maybe I'll be interested in seeing it when it's not everywhere,
The
So
Minions.
yeah, so it's one of those. And Wicked is at that point right now where I'm not sick of it. And it could be that lightning in a bottle situation that happens every now and again, where it has just the amount of crazy hype where you're almost sick of it, and then it kind of dies down and you're good. But I don't know yet.
Yeah, just in time for the sequel to come out.
Yeah, in a year. Yeah, exactly. And so I guess we'll see with that. I one thing I will say from my theater background is when I would judge all state speech competition, and they would have the musical theater category, or they'd have the even an individual contest and things like that. I don't know how many times, and auditions also, just regular auditions around the community. I don't know how many times I have heard Popular. That's one that I don't even think Ariana Grande is going to be able to freshen that up enough to make me re-interested in that song, because I think every single kid, which is a good thing. I'm glad that they enjoy it and everything. And, especially when you're at a young age and you're auditioning for musicals and stuff and you haven't done many, you want to just audition with songs. When I was a kid and I auditioned for my first show when I was 8, I used Zippity Doo Dah because it's the only song I knew at 8 years old. But, there's a point to that. But man, that song got to me really quick.
What about, so would you rather have someone sing that at an audition, or the sun will come out tomorrow?
To be honest, I think I would go with Annie.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Popular was just too popular.
Yeah,
it was too popular. So going back to the movie,
yeah, that's probably good.
So I from what it sounds like, it's cutting off right around where Act 1 ends and Act 2 starts is part 2 of the movie. Is there anything that you would want to see that is a little different that they could add to it, especially for the fact that it's a movie, so you can add, these whole worlds and special effects that aren't just secluded to the stage? Is there anything that you would want to see more epic, or something that they could add to just kind of add a little spice to the movie as opposed to the musical?
So I am very much, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, any deviation from the original is going to sting a little bit, and it's going to be a pill that I'll have to swallow. Not to say that I won't eventually end up liking it, but I am worried that I'm going to get there and I'm like, they didn't do it exactly like this. And it's going to upset me. That being said, world building in general, which I've already seen the trailer and I know that it's going to be fantastic. They add all of these beautiful magical elements to the world. I'm really excited to see what they're doing in the Emerald City, because the Emerald City was so amazing to see on stage that I can't imagine how grand it'll be in a film. It'll just be so exciting. Also, just the elements that they can do with costuming, because it's going to be up so close. The costumes in the musical are very, very intricate, and I don't think that we get to appreciate them from 200 rows back. Or, when I watched it at 16, I was in the nosebleed, so it was more than 200 rows back. I was like way, way back there, and I still loved it. But I'm excited to see costumes up close, and world building for sure. And hopefully good acting. Good acting, because I am sure a lot of people did this when casting was announced. Right when they announced Ariana Grande, I knew her voice. But Cynthia Erivo I had never heard before, so I immediately Googled her, and I was like, okay, all right, Alphabet, let's see what you got. And she was phenomenal. Yeah. And so I know that both of the leads can sing very, very well. I just hope that they can act.
Well, Cynthia Erivo, I haven't seen anything with her in it, but one I know she was in. I think it was Tubman. I think it was a Harriet Tubman adaptation, which she got praised for. She's been in quite a few TV shows too, as well. The only thing I've seen so far through actual Wicked is they released a behind the scenes shot. They did kind of the similar stuff that they did with, say, like Les Mis, where they had live on set singing and they didn't dub it over in post. And I was like, when I first heard her sing parts of Defying Gravity, I was like, that sounds really like auto-tuned, or there's Melodyne in it or something. It just feels very synthetic because it's too pitch perfect. And then they showed this behind the scenes shot of her in a harness on her broom in a blue screen, and she's flipping around and she's singing like some of the most beltiest belt moments in that song, and it was pitch perfect.
And you were like, "Oh man, that's just how good she is."
I was proven completely wrong. And
Sure.
so, those are the kind of things that get me really excited. Is there's some people that just show up out of nowhere. I don't mean to like disparage her by saying she has no career. She obviously has had one long before this, but it's funny to just see someone, just at least in my eyes, come out of nowhere and just kind of, she's meteoric now. Just that one movie. And, not saying that she wasn't famous before, but this just took her to that level. When we were watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade this year, you see all these people, you have Jennifer Hudson, and you have all these crazy singers that are amazing. And Cynthia Erivo was there, and she didn't sing. She just sat with the anchors because that's how big she is now. Like, she didn't even have to go sit in the rain on a Barney float and sing, something random. Like, she got to just chill with them because she is her and Ariana Grande are the biggest things right now that everyone's talking about. Mm-hmm. So, we'll see how, if it lives up to that in our eyes. But so far, like I said, I had no interest in Wicked. And when they announced the movie, I was even less interested. And then now, I have kind of jumped into the hype a little bit. And I have.
You're ready.
I'm always that person though that, if something is, everybody is, I like being a part of something big. And so whenever everyone's kind of rallying behind something and they're really excited for it for various reasons, and, the trailers do it justice, which this one did, I get excited too. I got chills when I saw the trailer, and I didn't know anything about it. And I think it's just because I felt the same way, which a lot of people, this is kind of controversial, but I felt the same way with the Les Mis trailer when they announced that Les Mis was going to be made in the movie with Hugh Jackman, and that came out on Christmas Day. I remember. And
I know that Les Mis was not well received. I loved Les Mis,
and that was another one that I think I told you this, but I thought it wasn't as epic as the musical is, the movie version. I did like the movie though, and I thought the acting was great and there was some good moments and everything. But I remember when that trailer came out and it was like Christmas Day and it was playing the swells of all the music. I was like, this is an event. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe musicals are best to be released around Christmas time because it's already kind of a celebratory season and everybody's really just excited for what's to come. But I remember when that was announced, I was really excited as well.
Yeah. You know what? One thing I do want to say about Cynthia's voice, I know that we had already talked about Ariana Grande and how I'm nervous that it's going to be too pop, and I'm curious to see how she comes across as Glinda. With Cynthia, something that I really hope that I will hear is a nasally aspect to her voice. I hope that she keeps that witchiness that her predecessors on Broadway have had, where it's just very forward and kind of witchy. That I would miss that a lot if she didn't include that in her songs.
So with that being said, I wanted to kind of do something where I wanted us to review the movie before we see it out of 5 stars.
Well, wait, how are we going to do that? We haven't seen it.
Just based off of what we've gathered.
Okay.
And then we will re-review it when we come back next week. And we can give our actual review and see if they're about matched or if they were different, better, worse.
Okay. You want me to go first?
Go ahead, go first.
Okay, I am giving it a 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. That's pretty good.
4 out of 5, yeah. The world seems very epic. I haven't gotten to see much of the acting, obviously, from the trailers. And I know that both of the ladies can sing. I know that it's getting great reviews. So I'm going to say 4 out of 5. That's my expectation. So hopefully it's not too high. And then I go in and I'm like, oh, crap.
I'm going to give it and this is a little harsh, and it's not for any harsh reason, but I am going to start out by giving it a 3 out of 5. And the only reason I'm going to say a 3 out of 5 is because I have seen some movies where I watch the trailer and it gives me goosebumps and I am so hyped for it. This movie's long. It's like 2.5 hours, if not longer. I'm worried that hype is going to die quick in the middle. And I'm worried it won't keep me. And this is from someone who's never seen the musical.
I was just about to say that.
Who has never, like, I've heard the music, but I haven't seen the story progress. I've heard a lot of people say it does not feel that long, but I'm going to be a little tentative with it, and I'm going to say three stars because, yeah, I think I'm at the beginning. I'm going to get really excited and kind of pumped. And then we're going to get about halfway through and I'm going to be ready for like Defying Gravity. And I want to see that all turn out. And
you don't know this, but halfway through there is a ballroom scene where they're at like basically prom.
Yeah.
I am so thrilled for that. It's basically when it's right before Popular. So it's right when they become friends. Mm-hmm. All I can say is as a theater major, I'm shocked you would feel that way because you're used to shows being 3 hours long. And you're never like, oh gosh, I wish that this would end.
I don't know if I'm going to be bored. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily going to like sit there and be like looking at my watch, mm-hmm. hypothetically, and like stretching my feet. I think I'm just wondering the feel that I'm getting from this movie when I see the trailers and I hear the music and it's the swells of it and everything. I'm wondering if that feeling I get is going to sustain. So
sure.
I don't think I'm going to check out completely. And that's why I give it 3 stars. But I'm wondering if I'm going to be like, this is what I'm here to see. And this is what I want out of it. And like halfway through, I'm like, this isn't quite what I'm here for.
So wait, what do you want out of it? Because I've obviously seen it. I can compare it to what I saw on stage. What are you looking for out of this movie?
I think I'm looking for it to be just really epic. And on a grand scale, and it feels, and it's hard to explain, but it feels like an event. It feels like something that, one of those things that you bring your entire family to because you feel like if any of you miss it, it's something like you got to see it in theaters kind of feel. And one thing that could happen is that, or it's one of those things that halfway through I may go, this is great, but I didn't need to see it in theaters. It's something that it's small enough for me that I could have watched it at home and felt just as entertained. I'm guessing that's not going to happen, but I'm being a little cautious.
I was going to say, but you gave it 3 out of 5, so you're thinking that might happen for sure.
I mean, I'm just being cautious. I don't know. There have been a couple times that I've been burned that way where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see this. I think it's going to be just like one movie that pops up in my head from when I was in high school was Where the Wild Things Are.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a great movie.
I've actually never seen it.
It's weird. It's weird. I mean, Where the Wild Things Are, the kids' book. Weird. And it's directed by Spike Jonze, who's I always think of him as a producer of the Jackass movies, and he's in Jackass and stuff. He dresses like the old lady and stuff. But he's a phenomenal director in the sense of he did Her later on with Joaquin Phoenix. He did a lot of music videos, some of the most iconic ones like Beastie Boys and things like that. But I was like in high school, I was at like my peak hipster phase, and they were playing I don't remember the song in the trailer. The trailer, if you look up the Where the Wild Things Are trailer, I was like, ooh, this looks like my thing. Like, this is going to be my movie. And like, I watched the trailer like 100 times before I went and saw it. And then I went and saw the movie, and I did not dislike it, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And it kind of numbs that like feeling of excitement a little bit. I bet if I went back and watched it now, I would like it more than when I was a kid because I have different expectations. But I think of something like that And so with Wicked, who knows? We'll just have to see. Where I'm like I'm sensing this feel, and it's not in the end. Mm-hmm. But who knows? I could be wrong.
Well, I will make you a promise right now. No matter what, I will not sing in the theater. I promise. I won't do that annoying whisper sing either, where you're sitting there next to someone and it's like, it's time to try defying, and someone's next to you like, gravity, I think I'll try.
Well, I can guarantee you I will not be doing that as well. We're going with our friend Tony. Maybe he'll do it. I don't know.
Popular's going to get you. I bet you cry.
So something about me that you will find throughout these podcasts is I'm a baby when it comes to movies. It could be a movie that is not that deep or that interesting or that good even, and there'll be a moment that'll make me cry. I cry at movies more than I cry at death of loved ones. I don't know.
What's up with that?
I
feel like we need to unpack that.
I don't know if that's the podcast intention, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see that. We'll see that, I'm sure, in the future too. But I'm wondering if I will too. I cried in Les Mis.
Yeah,
for sure.
I did too, but
I mean, shit, I probably cried at Grease, but
I hope not. You're like, those summer nights are just so. I felt like I was there.
No, I think that's a good point, though. We'll see. I'll be honest in the follow-up episode in a week, and I'll tell you if I cried, and maybe we'll have a cry count.
A cry count.
See how many times I cried.
That's funny.
But yeah, we'll come back to you here soon and tell you how we really thought of the movie once we see it. Yeah, we are a little late to it, but
to be fair, I do that on purpose. I don't like seeing shows, any movies when they come out the first weekend. I like people to tell me afterwards if it's a movie to spend my money on or not. Like, for example, Moana 2, will not go see in theaters. Yeah. I was very excited for that movie.
That's fair. That's actually a good point, too, going back to movies that like I went in expecting one thing and I got another. That's also something that happens. With the first Moana movie, I listened to that soundtrack. They released it like a month before the movie came out. I listened to it like on my way to work every day. Something about it just got me. I just loved the music, and I still do. And I had a very vivid picture of what the movie was going to be in my head, and it was not that. But it wasn't disappointing. It was just a different feeling. The vibe of the movie was very different than what I thought it was going to be.
Interesting.
In a good way.
What do you remember what you thought the movie was going to be?
I thought the movie was going to be a little more... It actually had a little more whimsy than I thought it would have. I thought it was going to be in the more of a like a Treasure Planet vibe than a like... It's more kiddie, and I mean that in the best way possible.
So you thought it was going to be like really serious?
I thought it was going to be a little more serious, but the whimsy of it is what makes that movie so memorable and charming. Yet again, that's another movie I cried watching.
Cried at what?
I actually cried at what's the song? Where You Are, like one of the first songs.
Okay.
And I think the reason I cried was because I heard it so many times and I had it pictured in my head, and that was the one song that was exactly what I thought it was going to be.
Oh.
And it just something about like I was hoping it was going to just be animated the way it ended up being. And
sure.
It made me cry. Also, the very end when she returns the jewel.
That's my favorite song.
That gives me goosebumps. I'm just thinking about
this is not who you are.
Yeah.
That part. Oh my gosh.
You're gonna make me cry. Stop.
Okay.
All right. With that being said, that was the first episode, guys. That was the first episode of the Cinephiles podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you stick around. Trisha's going to be back with us for the next episode. Like I said, this is going to be kind of a two-parter to kick off the podcast, and we're going to give our thoughts on
I'm going to
Wicked.
be with you every episode. What? I'm going to do your jingle.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't get rid of me.
You're doing my jingle. But I'm really excited. And then next episode, we'll also hint at a few upcoming episodes and what we'll be talking about. So I hope you guys stick around for that. Thanks so much. Make sure to follow us on our socials. We have a Twitter, we have a YouTube. That's where you can watch us. We're going to be on Spotify and all the other streaming services. So if you ever just want to listen to us and not look at our face or my face, feel free to do so. So thanks so much, guys, and we will see you in the next episode.